Welcome to News from a Different View. My name is Don Black, and I'm going to be your host today. In a few days, an important time in American history will take place, and that will be the annual holiday celebration of the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. You know, Dayton has been one of the cities highlighted in the last 20 years of having one of the most exciting and enduring holiday celebrations in the entire United States. Matter of fact, in 1989 or 90, Dayton was considered the #1 celebration of Dr. King's life, and we're very proud of that, and we've consistently been right at the top of cities who honored the legacy of Dr. King. This evening we have three important guests with us, people who are involved and have been involved, and then particularly this year, who are heading up the Martin Luther King celebration. To my right, we have Dr. Anthony Whitmore, who is the general chairman of this year's Martin Luther King holiday celebration. To my left, we have Ms. Margaret Peters, noted historian, who is head of the Martin Luther King Schools Scholarship Program. And directly in front of me, we have Mr. Robert Worley Allham. I'm sorry. I probably didn't pronounce it exactly as it should, as long as I've known him. I've known Bob for, about 20, 25 years. We worked together when I was general chairman of the general coordinator of the Martin Luther King celebration. So we're going to start this evening with Margaret Peters. Everybody in the Dayton area knows of Dr. Peters because she is noted as someone who is very fluent in the history of African American culture in America. Why do we celebrate the King celebration?
Well, Dr. King had such a tremendous influence, not just in this country, but around the world. We always think of Dr. King's work starting in 1955 with the Montgomery bus boycott. And it was out of that bus boycott that the segregated seating on the buses was declared unconstitutional. He then went on with the civil rights work, and of course we got the Civil Rights Act as a result of that. He then continued with voting because so many black people in the South were denied the right to vote, and we came up with that with the Voting Rights Act. He was also one of those who spoke out against the Vietnam War, though that is not generally known. Sometimes we tend to focus so much on the March on Washington and the speech he gave that Dr. Vincent Harding wrote an excellent essay, which I hope everyone will read. It's called Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Us in Today's World. And in it he talks about the fact that we have frozen Dr. King in 1963, and that he's often pictured as sort of this gentle, nice preacher whose only concern was that black and white children hold hands. And I get that every year when we have our contests. I have children who tell me that Dr. King's dream has come true because I have friends of all races. And we try very hard with the topics we give them to help them realize that he did much more than that. And it's not just young children who feel that way. I teach U.S. history at Sinclair. And last quarter, I showed the video of Dr. King giving his speech against the Vietnam War. And at the end, one of the students said, "Why haven't I heard this before? All I hear is I have a dream." And with I have a dream, all they hear is the last part, which one person called the whoop section, because it makes you feel good to hear it. So we tried to let them see that he was concerned about that. He was concerned about poverty. He was concerned about economic inequality. Just so many things that he worked on. And one of the points that Dr. Harding makes is that those who worked with Dr. King really think that the work he was doing beyond civil rights and voting is what led to his assassination. It's a fantastic essay. And with the work that we have the children do, from kindergarten through 12th grade, with the art, poetry, prose, as well as the scholarship contest, they have to look at Dr. King's life in order to do their work.
You know, I often hear people say when they discuss Dr. King that Dr. King has, we feel his dream has been accomplished, as you said, that everything is all right now. What's your gripe? Barack Obama's in the White House. I mean, hey, what should black people complain about?
That's interesting that you should say that, because one of the winning essays we got was from a young man, Kalen Edwards of Trotwood Madison, who talked about the fact that when President Obama was elected, he thought, as a lot of Americans did, that the dream was coming true and everything was okay, but that there are still ignorant people who hate President Obama simply because he's African American. They call him names like coon and boy, and that racism is still a problem. Some of our children are beginning to realize that just because we have him in the White House, that does not mean everything is okay. We've still got economic inequality. The unemployment rate for black people is higher than among the white population. We still have discrimination. It's just not by Klan people, but by business people, by people who rent homes, by people who make loans. I mean, all of this financial meltdown. Some of those who are most harshly affected were black people, Latinos. Okay, the ones who are at the bottom already, are the ones who are paying the price.
Mm-hmm. Well, Dr. Whitmore. Dr. Whitmore is a well-known community leader, activist, professional. Not only has he worked in civil rights in some corners, but he's also been someone who has been involved in economic empowerment. And one of the things that I always point to when I talk about the condition that exists today is that even though, when Dr. King was alive, the basic premise was on public accommodations. I know as a kid, and I used to go to Mississippi with my grandmother, we would have to go to the back of the bus, and I talked to my kids about that today. And it's hard for them to really believe that really happened to me, but we used to have to go to the back of the bus. When we got off the bus in Mississippi, wherever we were in Mississippi, we would have to go to a segregated bathroom or drink out of a segregated fountain, which was generally filthy and nasty and dirty. But that was things that was happening in my lifetime, and a lot of people feel that equality has been obtained basically because you don't have to do those things, but that was only one small part of the equation of integration and the idea of equality. But today, there are so many other things, and Dr. Whitmore here has been involved in politics, and he understands when you look at the tone of the country right now, as it relates to Dr. King's dream. And let me preface it by saying this. I laugh all the time when I hear people say, if Dr. King was alive, he would do this. We really don't know what Dr. King would do if he were alive in 2012. We do know that he would probably be on the forefront fighting for equality on the level in which equality does not exist today. So from a standpoint of a person who watches the political scene, you see what's happening now in this pre-election period and all that. How do you see King fitting in all this if he were alive?
Don, when I think about Dr. King, I think about him as being much more than just a man. I think of Dr. King as the birth of a movement. And that movement, once again, had tied into a sister who was tired. If you remember, Ms. Parks worked all day, and at the same time that Dr. King was beginning to move some movement, that was also the time when she said, I'm not getting up. We continue, and I think that's one of the problems in this great blessed country that we're in. We have what I call nice conversations, but we don't have those truthful conversations that in this wonderful country that we have some real issues. And those issues are beyond just race. Because for me, as a proud black man, I think economics is one of the most crucial aspects for us as a people. And us, I'll include poor people into that, regardless of the color. Dr. King, to me, had he had an opportunity to live today, you would have seen at that time after the boycott and at the time he wrote his book and he was moved by different things, he was becoming more motivated toward the issue of poverty. Well, poverty to me, how you solve that is economics.
Right.
And of course, education. But having access to that. And poor people, as you know, I grew up poor. And that wasn't an easy thing. We were joking before we came out about my 4th grade educated father, my 8th grade educated mother. And I want people to know that because young people have to understand that being poor is not a sentence to ignorance and being unsuccessful. Right. So King was living proof, even though he came out of a strong middle class family. I think that he would be continuing to work today. It would be more inclusive, but not forgetting that people of color who look like me still have a long way to go, not just in this country, but in the world, in the global marketplace.
Bill, as you and your wife Juanita worked for years, matter of fact, you were working with me back during the 80s when I was general coordinator of King Celebration here in Dayton. And I'm sure you learned a lot. You participated in every aspect of it. How have you seen the King Celebration evolve over the last 20 some odd years, really? Maybe longer.
Well, I started as a middle-class white kid back on the East Coast, not here in Dayton, not in the South. And so my perception is very different, I think, from the other folks. I started out very, very ignorant of all this stuff. And so when you talk about the drinking fountains and not being able to go to this store or bathroom or whatever, I had heard stuff like that, but I never really believed it. It just was a story, like something you'd see maybe in a cartoon on television or something. And it's over time, as I've come to meet and spend time talking with people, that I've learned more about the reality of it. I still haven't experienced it, but people who I've spoken with, as you three at the table, we've talked about stuff like that, and I know in my stomach that this stuff is real. And that's one of the things that's happened to me over time. And it's one of the things that I hope I can contribute to the MLK celebration, and have tried over time to inject that kind of view, that kind of approach, so that other people with my kind of ignorant background can learn what the reality of the situation is. I don't know if that answers your question, but
basically it does. I think the important thing is that, and I think from my experiences working with you and your lovely wife Juanita, not only have you learned, but you practiced what you've learned. And I think
absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's one of the key elements. Is I remember when I was general coordinator, and we would have the rallies at Courthouse Square, which I think that's been moved. But we'd have the rallies at Courthouse Square, and all these people, so-called, I guess you'd say, the elite or the, the mayor of this and the head of that. And I would just sit back and watch. I said, I wonder if this guy caught me running through his township at night, where I would end up. Now, this is a guy that's holding hands, singing "We Shall Overcome" and going through all these gyrations. I said, I wonder, if I moved next door to him tomorrow, what his attitude would be. Because a lot of it is unpracticed mythology, for lack of a better word. And I think the King celebration is supposed to be a practical practice of learning and implementation, So what go ahead, Mark.
I was going to say that's one of the things that I really admire about Bob and Juanita, because they work very closely with me on the Martin Luther King School program.
Right.
And as you say, when we have the rally and the march, there are people who come and they march and they go to the rally because that's what they're expected to do.
Right.
But immediately after the rally, they go back to where they came from. And many of them, from their comments, I know that they are not sincere in what they do. Because when we were discussing having one march instead of coming from 4 areas, one of the people from south of town commented, well, if I can't march from my neighborhood, I'm not going to march. Right. Which is, totally the opposite of what we're trying to do. Right. But with Bob and Juanita, it's not something they do once a year. Any program that I have at Zion or any place else that has to do with improving the community, I know they are going to be there, and they are going to support it. They didn't up and move out of Dayton View when certain folk moved in, so they are sincere. And I know there are a lot of others who are sincere. That's one reason I'm glad that this year we are returning to having the workshops, because when we started this with the first MLK celebration, we had the workshops at Roosevelt. And it was really something that made the celebration not a once-a-year thing, because we had different topics, and when we came back the next year, people talked about what they had done in terms of what they had studied that day. So I'm really glad that we have added the workshops this year.
And there are 2 things to that. Thank you. We decided, and since you are also a part, in fact, you're all a part of the MLK committee, is that, as you know, I asked the committee to look at doing things all this year, not just January. So all throughout the year, we have an opportunity to deal with what I referred to when I was speaking to you about the truth, to find those truths. And you heard when Bob was talking about that was not his experience. And all of us have to remember we respond to reality based on our experiences. And even though that experience may not be your experience, I think it's so important for me not to focus in on tolerance, but to learn acceptance.
Yeah.
And that piece is crucial for us having the right communication to move all people forward. And I see that a great deal with individuals such as he and his wife. I don't care where you go in the community, you're going to see the Einhorns. And they're always going to be receptive, and it's not just in the African American community, because I'm in and out of a lot of different communities, and there are the Einhorns.
And and I'm not going to make this a Bob and
Juanita.
Bill and Juanita.
Bob and Juanita, yeah.
I don't know, I like that Bob and Juanita show. Okay.
Show, but truthfully though, I can honestly say, and I've said this publicly, and I've said it, we've done articles on you guys in the newspaper and so forth, that I think that's what the MLK, the whole idea of MLK is that people, and I can't say it'll ever be a colorless society, but I know when I look at Bob and I look at Juanita, I don't look at them as white people.
No.
I just look at them.
It's
true.
people.
I'm serious, honestly. I wouldn't say that out here on television if I didn't mean it. I look at them as 2 people who are dedicated to our community, who work hard in it, and not just there for the show. And the kudos, as they say, and the slap on the back. They're people who really are dedicated. And that's what this whole thing, to me, is supposed to evolve into. That, you're here because you love your community, you love the people. It's not about some award that you're going to get or some kind of recognition you're going to get, but because that's who you are. And I think we all can learn from that and eventually evolve to that if we're serious about what we want to do,
Well, thank you for all this recognition.
Well, that's the end of it for the night.
Oh, I was hoping for a few more. Well, never mind then. There is one other point that I wanted to make. The I have a dream thing that everybody knows about. I think not the biggest point. I think maybe injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
Everywhere.
And I think there's an awful lot of those that people just don't have in their mind.
Yeah.
And maybe over the course of the year, as we
can
deal with more
educate and
programs,
inform.
Yeah, and maybe explain a little bit more about the totality
his
of
work.
what's needed. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Last Sunday afternoon at Zion Baptist Church here in Dayton, Dr. Art Thomas, who is known, I guess, throughout the country as
The world.
an educator and an administrator and a speaker on things related primarily to the African American culture. Now, he gave a rousing speech. I couldn't stay because I was kind of preoccupied. But tell me about that. What did he do that is uncharacteristic of Art Thomas? Was it just pure, unadulterated Art Thomas?
I thought it was, well, I've known Art Thomas since the 60s. We taught together at Roth High School. And the speech was pure Art Thomas. It was Art Thomas talking about the importance of education. It was Art Thomas talking about the importance of knowing our history. And it was Art Thomas encouraging people to get an education. You know, he pointed out Dr. Whitmore, who was a student and who really took advantage of everything in order to become what he is. I mean, you talk about somebody whose parents got like 4th and 8th grade education. All right, he is a doctor. He's worked in all of these great positions simply because he got the education that was necessary. And that's one of the things that we push when we talk about Dr. King. Dr. Thomas talked about different ways that he's been able to help people move forward in their careers. You know, and he's still doing that, working not just in the school, not just in academics, but in the business world also, because we need to stop putting all of our eggs in one basket, but to realize that, you know, there's a whole world out there with a lot of different areas. So of course he got his standing ovation. He always does. He had his picture taken with the young people who read the Emancipation Proclamation. You know, they were very, very proud to be up there with him. So I'm just so glad that he was our speaker, because he gave us that little jolt that we needed, you know, to remind us why we are here. We're not here just to think about somebody who was assassinated and, you know, he did some good things, but we have to carry on what he began.
Legacy.
We have to carry on what he began.
And I think one of the primary things that I constantly believe in and preach, and that is that it's not just important that I make it.
We all make it.
That we all have an opportunity to make it. Now, some people are not going to make it just because they don't want to make it. But I think Dr. King gave his life so that the garbage collector could have an opportunity to make it.
Absolutely.
The school teacher could have an opportunity to make it. The guy that wants to get in corporate America has opportunity. I think the opportunity, that's the key word. And I think that's what he did a lot of, and that's what his whole life was based on.
Right.
You know, because, you know, we forget that Dr. King was only 39 years old. You know, when you look at him, you think about somebody much older because of his wisdom and his, you know, but he was a young man doing what generally older men do.
Right, and because he accomplished so much. I mean, if you just look at what the man wrote, I mean, you take his letter from a Birmingham jail, you take his book on Why We Can't Wait, you know, just tremendous. So, you know, and it would be great if we could just have sessions on his writings. Because his books contain so much wisdom. You know, Bob was talking about the one statement, but he also talked about our being caught in an inescapable web of mutuality.
Absolutely.
That what affects one person directly affects another person indirectly. That we're all tied together. And you just find so many of these gems in his work because he was so well read. You know, he constantly quoted people like James Russell Lowell.
Yes.
You know, just marvelous, marvelous.
You know, I've had been fortunate, for lack of a better word, to have met several of his close associates. Andrew Young, I've interviewed him. Jesse Jackson, Hosea Williams, the late Hosea Williams.
Yes.
Ralph Abernathy. I had a chance to sit down with him. Coretta King, as you know, she was here in '93 for our convention, which I was involved in, and so many. Juanita Abernathy in Atlanta, and they all said one thing, and that is basically that King loved people.
Oh yeah.
You know, you got to love people to do the things he
That he
did.
did, yeah.
You know, I mean, he walked and he was assaulted and almost killed even before he was eventually killed because he loved. Do we have that love today? I mean, anybody can answer that question. Do we have the kind of love that really will put you in the firing line? Do we have that as a people?
I think that we have the potential for love. I think we're born innocent. I think we're born clean. And what happens is when we get polluted after we have been birthed, and we get these little connectors. If you watch children and they're playing, especially in preschool, they are just playing with other children.
Right.
But if you come back to those same children, I'd say today, in my time, it would have been maybe 4th or 5th grade. But I bet if you go to 2nd grade or 3rd grade now, they're able to see things. And they see things because we as adults poison their innocence with our prejudices and those other little things that kids are not mature enough to understand what they're hearing. So what they do, they repeat that. And we've all gone through that. Dr. King certainly was loved, but I think Dr. King walked with a confidence and an assertiveness that even today he may be viewed maybe a little bit more militant than what he was in those days in the 60s.
Yeah, that's interesting because one of the topics for our essay contest this year had to do with the monument.
Yes.
And the question of whether or not that is the most fitting way to honor him. And one of our students, Jackson Carmen from Dayton Boys Prep Academy, said that is the perfect way to honor him. And he wrote a magnificent essay. He talked about the fact that you see him standing in a pose of leadership, with his chest out and very proud. And it's interesting that some people didn't like that because they thought it made him look confrontational. I say he was confrontational, please. Yeah. And he talked. Jackson talked about the fact that you could see all the details in it, and that it was as though Medusa had captured him in stone. And I think this is great. This 6th grade child knows who Medusa is. And I'll bet you that we've got older students who have no idea who Medusa was. But he did a great job of explaining why that monument is a fitting way, because it shows his leadership, it shows his greatness, and it reminds us of the things that he did. And this is a 6th grader.
And one thing you just said, which many people often, when they talk of King, they try to reduce him to a humble, non-threatening kind of person who was just there. When in reality, King was a very threatening person. He was humble from one standpoint, but strong and vibrant and confrontational. Because if you had to be confrontational against Bo Connors, against water hoses and dogs. I mean, so.
I would like to add one thing here. The letter from a Birmingham jail you can find online, either in Wikipedia or Google, and it's got a full range of all these different things that Dr. King did, including the resistance to the police and why we can't wait, and why, just why we can't wait, why we've waited and things have not gotten better, and now is the time, if not now, when. I would encourage people to go and just look it up. It's a short piece.
Say that again.
Either on Wikipedia, online, or Google. Letter from a Birmingham jail. It's easy to find, not terribly long, but it's got everything there, I think.
Yeah, if you go online and you simply enter the titles of his speeches, or just speeches of Martin Luther King Jr., they will all come up. His speech when he got the Nobel Peace Prize, this particular speech, the last speech that he gave, his Vietnam War speech, they are all online.
Could I present something on the table? When we're talking about Dr. King, and I always try to go back to the boycott, the Montgomery boycott, because of, to me, when you choose to be a civil rights leader, or the situation chooses you, it thrusts you into an arena where everybody comes at you. And it's not just people who don't look like us that come after us. It's that It's that unfortunate disconnect between those who are willing to sacrifice for that love, a greater love, for our brothers and sisters. I'm often reminded when I think about the boycott, how many days was that, Mrs. Peters? Almost a year.
It was a year.
Where they did not
Ride the bus.
No.
No.
Dr. King would help drive, his family members, the neighbors, everybody was on the same page. So that was real love to me, to sacrifice when they were inconvenienced.
And let me stop you
walked,
right there,
or they
Dr.
walked.
Whitmore, and ask you, and ask all three of you, do we have that today? I mean, you know, I've watched movies. Of course, I wasn't there, but I've watched movies and read things where, when I think about today, 2012, could that work today?
I think one of the major factors that they had that many of us don't have today was a deep faith and membership in a church, active membership, because when you watch these videos, you see that the people who were involved, and many of them were working for white people, you know, they were running a risk doing it, but at night they would go to the church, they would sing, they would pray, that would give them the determination to go ahead and do what is right. All right. But so many of us, now that we have made it, we don't even go to church.
Yeah.
Right? So we don't have a common place where we all come together. And that would make it more difficult for us to do something like that now. Plus we tend to forget sometimes, as Dr. Whitmore mentioned, that not all black people supported Dr. King.
True.
You had a lot of establishment black people who were vehemently opposed to what he was doing because it threatened them. Of course, now they all love him.
Well, he's dead.
So, yeah,
I mean, you know,
it's
really
safe
and
now.
truly,
It's
you
safe.
know, you know, there's nothing like a dead hero to form whatever analogy you want to form. I noticed that, you know, Malcolm X was probably one of the most hated people on earth. After he died, they made movies. Everybody was wearing an X on their hat. You know, he became a hero of sorts. You know.
But we exploited even him.
Yes.
We say
Sure.
we take out by any means necessary, but we don't put it in the right context.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And so I think we do that to belittle folks as people try to do King in different ways. I know one of the things on the question when you ask, it's the Mrs. Peters of the world who are out there, and thank God that they're still out there. They are out there making sure that these young children, that we don't give up on our youth. We don't give up on each other. You know, and everybody seated around here, we have folks that we may not agree with, etc., but we're not going to give up on them because we see that little bit of light, that little bit of hope. Because I'm living proof that if people had just given up, I wouldn't be who I am today. And I'm so grateful. So we need those folks. If we can start really focusing our people on a common issue. You know, in Montgomery, they had to have a common bond. What are we really missing here in the city? What really unites all poor people in the city? What is it? Is it, we obviously know the voting right is still very important. Civil rights, whether people, some will always say to you, the bourgeois may say to you that it is no longer needed. And I remind those friends of mine who are the bourgeois that if it were not for those other folks, like our grandparents and my parents, those folks who scrubbed the floors and took those dehumanizing jobs often to educate us, that's how we made it.
Yeah.
And so we're going to have to find what is that common bond in our community. Certainly our children, don't give up on them. But what is pulling us together today? And if we can find that, I think we'll bring different people, not just the black people, but all poor people.
Well, I think one of the issues is voting.
Yes.
Simply because across the country, we have governors and legislatures that are enacting rules to make it more difficult for old people, black people, poor people, students to vote. I mean, I was watching TV the other day, and there's this woman who's 84 years old. She has voted in every election since she was old enough to vote. She will not be able to vote now because she does not have a state-approved ID, and she can't get voted because she doesn't have a birth certificate because she was born at home. So we also have some of the places where they are cutting out the Sunday voting, okay, the last Sunday before the election. They are mandating that college students have particular kinds of IDs, and they write in little letters so that they can't use the IDs they have. In one place, if you're in a technical college, you can't use a technical college ID. They are making it harder for people to register to vote. In Florida, a teacher was fined $5,000 because she registered her seniors in high school to vote. And right across the page where you're registering people to vote is a warning. You know, that if there's anything wrong with this, you will go to prison. Right? So they are deliberately making it hard to vote, because we even had a Republican leader who said that it benefits us when there are fewer voters.
Sure it does.
It
That's
benefits
the
us.
question. Why?
Right.
Yeah, what?
Right.
One other point that's related to all this stuff, I think, is the Poor People's Campaign,
Yeah.
Yeah.
where King set out to have a multiracial army go to Washington and demand that poverty be addressed in a serious way. Now, what's going on is not so much, I think, a problem of people having difficulty moving up. That's a problem, but other people are moving down.
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
the way the economy is being
Right.
used.
Well, all you have to do is look at that spread they keep showing on TV of the chart of how much
Right.
the income of the top 1% has
Right.
gone up over the past 30 years, while everybody else has stayed stagnant or actually dropped.
So I think this is something important that maybe your organization can address as part of the Martin Luther King education program.
It's another
Well, I know
piece.
one thing for sure, the Voting Rights Act will be up for, I guess, vote.
Oh, yeah, that
in the
passes
next-
automatically.
Yeah, but I think there's more emphasis on defeating or turning back the clock on it than it has been before, because it's very easy to see that there's some segments of society who, as you said, are benefit from the less amount of people who exercise their right to vote. So I think that's a very important. I think those are, when we think in terms of what Dr. King would be doing, these are things he would be leading today if he were still here. I want to move ahead a little bit because we're going to run out of time if we're not careful. Okay, on Sunday, January 8th, which is this coming Sunday, the worship service. You want to tell us a little bit about what's going to happen at Pleasant Green Baptist Church?
Well, at our worship service, obviously, every year that is a part, and this is one of the things I want the community to understand, that what we're doing is really a part of history. And I know some folks may not have always liked the way we've done things in the past, but that's because that's who we are as a community. The worship service, of course, will bring different individuals into the church. It is open to the community, and we will worship with everyone, giving praise. Just as when we got past Dr. Thomas's part of the emancipation, and I wanted to say one of the things I got from him was moving us from that 1865 up to 2011, and he was absolutely brilliant on how he was able to do that with all of that. So the worship service, to me, is another activity that we bring the community together and we focus in on our spirituality. And that is something that I think as poor people, black, white, Latino, we used to all be more spiritual than what we are. Unfortunately, many, and that's another debate, is the fact of integration and what that meant versus when people were down south. They, from the economic standpoint, while it may have been in the colored section, we at least owned it. We came up and got in the factories, and we thought we had arrived, and we owned nothing but debt.
Exactly. But on Sunday at the worship service, there'll be choirs. What's going to happen?
There'll be choirs, there'll be preaching, and the traditional part of who we are is in the worship series.
Okay, and I think my good friend Marsha Barnhart's going to be the MC, and of course, we always know who's going to be the speaker.
And it's,
For the worship service?
I'm not sure.
Well,
not
at the
selected.
worship service, there'll be different
There'll be
people
different ones.
chatting.
There's
You
not
know,
a-
next at the next one, you'll get to The other part there, you're talking about Dr. Walker when he's going to be speaking, but at this particular part,
because it's interfaith, there'll
yes,
be more than
you're going to have all the different groups coming in. You may have a rabbi, you could have a monk, you could have a priest and a Baptist person all coming, almost as you would say the way I hope heaven is, and heaven won't be segregated.
Right. Right. Okay. And then we'll move on from Sunday to Friday, the 13th, and that's going to be the prayer breakfast. That's always a big event. I think this year Dr. Sylvester Walker is going to be the speaker.
Wonderful speaker.
Yeah.
He's a pastor of St. Luke Baptist Church here in Dayton, and I'm sure a lot of people are going to come out for that. That's I'm not sure, the time is 7:30 in the morning. I used
Correct.
all the years that I was coordinator, I used to hate to get up so early. I said, man, I got to go way out here. It'd be cold. I mean, it would really be cold. But it was always a nice event. Back then, we had generally someone from of national note would be the speaker, and it was a good crowd pleaser, and then it would kind of set the tone for the rest of the evening. Now, on that Friday evening is the big event, the Margaret Peters School. Now, just to show you how big it is, nobody else has an event named after them.
Yeah, they're great. Yeah. What happened a few years ago when Faye Johnson was with us, we were having the program, and she suddenly came up on stage and opened up the banner, and it had changed to the Margaret Peters Awards program. But this is our 27th program. Each year we have 2 contests in the schools, K-12 art, poetry, and prose, as well as the scholarship contest. We had 484 students who entered this year, and we will recognize all of the winners, art, poetry, prose, as well as our scholarship winners. And this is the first time we have ever had a tie among the prose and poetry winners. And there are 2 students from Africa who talked about their experiences in Africa, where they were victims of war and what it means to them to be in the United States and have a chance for an education. We have 6 scholarship winners. One will take the award from some of the area churches and data processing. That's DeBoris Person, who is going to the University of Dayton. And then we have 5 scholarship winners who will be going to Wright State University. Our MC is going to be Valerie Galloway. The Stivers Choir is going to sing. The Thurgood Marshall Black Knights will be doing color guard. And we'll have, area preachers to do our invocation and benediction. And all of the winning entries will be on display. All of the winning entries. Then after the program, the entries will be at different sites around the city. They will be down at the International Peace Museum. Then they'll be moving to the Children's Medical Center. Then they will be moving to City Hall. And for the first time, they are going to be at the food bank, which is really nice because one of the essays is about overcoming the problem of hunger. And then they will end up on the 26th of April at Zion for our African American History Awards program, and then they can take them home. It's free, it's open to the public, it's at Thurgood Marshall at 7 o'clock on Friday the 13th, and it's a great place for parents to take pictures as their children go up.
And I'm just going to add, no one should have any fear because it's Friday the 13th.
Yes, we are not, we don't believe in that.
We don't believe in superstition, right. We're going to come out and support our young people
Right.
because it helps to enhance our young people's desire to do better, when they're supported in the things. And many of them are very talented and work hard.
Yeah,
because I've read many of them each year, and we always report on it.
Yeah, and we'll also recognize their teachers and counselors.
Right. And there are a lot of, regardless of what people say, there are a lot of good teachers out there who work hard.
We have excellent teachers.
To make sure that our children receive the best education money can buy.
And some of the things these kids write and some of the art is amazing.
It is.
It's absolutely amazing.
It's amazing.
So people should come and see it.
Yeah.
Right. The winning art piece from one again is from Belmont. There's some teachers who always have their students really work hard at these, and one is Carol Rogers from Belmont. And so our 10th grade winner has hands, different colors, and then the quotation is from Jimi Hendrix. That what we need to do is to have the power of love become more important than the love of power, and
Yes.
then we'll have peace.
The love of power.
Yes, beautiful
That
piece
and
of
see, a lot of these kids don't know who Jimi Hendrix was, but
we'll have, to
Jimi
find one,
Hendrix,
we'll have to find one of him breaking his
right?
guitar.
Yeah,
Or playing his
that was
guitar
my
with his teeth.
generation during the peace
Well, this
movement
is
of the
this is a
60s.
this is
So
a sophomore. She knows
yeah.
who he is.
yeah, yeah. Well, they, a lot of the music is still floating
Oh,
around,
yeah.
and kids know who they are. Okay, and then the biggie, one of the biggies. In fact, it's all big. I mean, it's all big. But everybody used to get excited about the musical.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh,
Yeah, I mean, we've had some fantastic choir directors, and I think Brother Cunningham,
Michael.
and yeah, Michael Cunningham, and the other gentleman is Dr. Cokes.
We've got Eldridge Coach, you've
Yeah.
got Wilma Greenlee,
Oh.
and all I can say about Wilma
Oh,
Greenlee,
fantastic voice.
I just do this.
Yes.
Put your hand
I
up.
just throw my hand up in praise.
Well, when she sang Sunday, it was just
Yeah, God
awesome,
is.
awesome.
We have
Yeah.
so much talent in this community.
Oh, this community is full of
It's
talent.
loaded. So everybody ought to come out. If you want to get your praise on, come on out to our gospel extravaganza.
Yes, that's
You'll miss a treat. We're going to go out there, and thank God Philip Simple is going to allow us to come in. And when we leave there, we want to leave the right spirit, and we're going to carry that on out through the greater region of Dayton.
And nobody has to worry about parking because Philip
No.
Temple has a lot of parking. I remember years ago we had it at Shiloh Baptist Church, which is a beautiful venue. And we generally would have about 3,000 people there, wouldn't we? I mean, it was huge, but we always had to worry about parking, man. It'd be cold, and we'd be trying to get there. But we made it, and we keep it going. And then, of course, the big day, the actual official holiday is Monday, January the 15th. 16th, I'm sorry, I can't see.
That's okay.
January 16th, the day after Dr. King's actual birth. And you want to tell us about how that's going to start? That's going to be a long day. A lot of things are going on.
It's going to be a long day, but the most important thing is going to be a meaningful day. So, we've always in the past, back to that history and culture again, where we would come from east, north, south, and west. We trying something different this year. We'll be at Welcome Stadium, and everyone will be assembled there. At 11 o'clock, we will proceed to move toward downtown at the convention center, at which place we will have a wonderful rally. We will also be, I think, showcasing one of our most talented young people. He refers to himself as Kobe DeLeon. He's a local young man who is very popular on the West Coast and part of the East Coast, and building up his own little group. He's here. He'll be a part for the young people, as well as we'll have different motivational things going on at the rally. After that, we'll have, as Mrs. Peters alluded to, back to workshops. There will be workshops for our youth and workshops for adults, and we're excited about that. That evening, as you know, we'll have Dr. Bogdan, who will come in from the University of Louisville, and I have just heard wonderful things about him as our keynote speaker. In all of our activities, you will see a very diverse participation. As our committees are diverse in MLK, that is the same with everything that we do. And I'd also like, Don, to just state, too, that the importance of solidarity and unity, because we were asked to be that overseer of that. And so I think we should be very proud that we've been able to bring a very diverse group of people together to make a difference. And hopefully, at the end of this, we can see more love in our community.
You want to tell us just for a couple of minutes what Solidarity and Unity is, because a lot of people may not know what that organization means.
That's only because we had not been getting out there, Don, but
Right.
We had been working for over a year being involved in the community. Solidarity and Unity is a group of individuals, African Americans, who come together to solve those issues, whether it's sociological, psychological, economic, judicial, whatever the issue is in the African American community. It is our responsibility to be not only change agents, but to solve the issues in the African American community. We will be announcing and having a big, what I call hoopla at some point in the next several weeks. And we have garnered different groups and different folks from Miss Mabel, who has very little education, to very well-educated individuals. So we have everybody around the table solving the issues in our community. I'm excited about that. We've done some good things. As you know, Solidarity and Unity has been focused on crime. So we've been working with the chief of police in Dayton, also with the sheriff, and looking at also looking at what impacts our young children. We've also been working on looking at domestic violence and how all of that impacts decision making, and looking at how our young people may have been looked at differently by our police force. So I'm excited about. So stay tuned to Solidarity and Unity, and that's just what we are. We're pulling all the different groups under one umbrella. Nobody owns anything. We're just coming together, solving the issues in the African American community. And I know some of my friends say, well, why does it have to be African Americans? Well, it's up to us to solve the issues in our community. Because we live in it, it's our responsibility.
You're going to mention the tickets.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
The tickets for the banquet and the
Well,
prayer
you can go
breakfast?
to the Peace Museum to purchase any of our tickets.
Where's the Peace Museum at?
The Peace Museum is directly across from the Y, the Men's Y MCA. You can also go to our website. You know, we're MLK Dayton. So go on the website, or you can phone any of us to get tickets. We'd be happy to bring out tickets to everyone because we want to invite the community. This is a community event, not an MLK event. It's a community event.
There's only, two events that actually cost, right?
Yeah.
Yes,
Everything else is
only
free.
two. Only two.
That's
Only
the
two.
banquet and the breakfast.
That's correct.
Right.
And that's because obviously it's a breakfast, so we have to pay for it. It's at Mandalay, so we have to do that. And of course, we'll be at the convention center
Okay.
for the banquet.
You know, I'm excited as I have been for years to not, I'm not really playing a great role in it, but
I don't.
I am excited about it because each year I think it brings something new to the Dayton community, and I think this year the job that you and the majority of the group has
It's
done.
the group, not me. It's the group. And you.
Well, the majority of the group has done is to bring a wider range of diversity. I mean,
Yes.
there have been groups who are involved this year I'd never heard of in Dayton. So that's good because it helps to hopefully bring us together closer. We learn a little bit more about each other than we might have known previous to bringing a group like this together. So we're real happy about that.
Yeah, and the two themes we have really emphasize both Dr. King's work in terms of civil rights and voting rights, and his work on a world scale, because the second theme is the World House.
World House.
So we're really dealing with both our own country, our own history, the civil and voting rights, and the world as a whole, all people, with the World House, which is really great.
One other thing I want to mention before we close out, and that is on Saturday, January the 21st, we're having a youth rally, workshop, and so forth. You want to tell us a little bit about that as we close out?
Those are our young people, Don, and we have a component to this group that are college components. So our universities are all tied in from the 1 to 3. You'll see that part going on with our workshops, and on the 21st you'll see some of the workshops we could not put on because of limited time.
Right.
The young people, and we have those young high school people who have worked to pull together a very strong program, and I encourage young people to come out, but also older people, because this is how we support our young folks, and to come out to learn, because their workshop is not just focused for them, it's for the community. So I'm hoping that the community will come out, all aspects of the community, from all four corners, to see what our young people have garnered and put together, and they're also very diverse.
Fantastic. So remember, starting this coming Sunday at, let's see, where is it going to be at? It's going to be at Pleasant Green Missionary Baptist Church. the worship service. Then we're going on to the interfaith prayer breakfast on Friday. Then we're going on to the annual Margaret Peters program and awards program and salute the students. Then we're going to move on to the MLK musical, which is always a big crowd pleaser, on the 15th. And then, of course, the big march and banquet and workshops and a little bit for everybody. Regardless of who you are, you're going to have a chance to participate in the Martin Luther King holiday celebration for 2012. If you have any questions, you can reach Dr. Anthony Whitmore. I guess you'd say you get enough calls.
God knows I do, Don.
Or, you can call the Dayton Weekly News office. We should be able to help you. And Margaret
See Mrs. Peters,
and
the Einhorns.
yeah, whoever out there that's on a committee or has a love for the King celebration, you can reach him. I'd like to thank my guests this evening for coming out, and just keep watching News from a Different View, sponsored by the Dayton Weekly News each week. Thank you.
Thank you, Don.
Thank
Thank you, Don.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Cut.